Rules of the Game by Amy Tan. I was 6 when my mother taught me the art of invisible strength. It was a strategy for winning arguments, respect from others, and eventually, though neither of us knew it at the time, chess games. Bite back your tongue, scolded my mother when I cried loudly, yanking her hand toward the store that sold bags of salted plums. At home, she said, wise guy, he not go against wind. In Chinese we say, come from south, blow with wind, poom, north will follow. Strongest wind cannot be seen. The next week I bit back my tongue as we entered the store with the forbidden candies. When my mother finished her shopping, she quietly plucked a small bag of plums from the rack and put it on the counter with the rest of the items. My mother imparted her daily truths so she could help my older brothers and me rise above our circumstances. We lived in San Francisco's Chinatown. Like most of the other Chinese children who played in the back alleys of restaurants and curio shops, I didn't think we were poor. My bowl was always full, 3 5-course meals every day, beginning with a soup of mysterious things I didn't want to know the names of. We lived on Waverly Place, in a warm, clean, 2-bedroom flat that sat above a small Chinese bakery specializing in steamed pastries and dim sum. In early morning, when the alley was still quiet, I could smell fragrant red beans as they were cooked down to pasty sweetness. By daybreak, our flat was heavy with the odor of fried sesame balls and sweet curried chicken crescents. From my bed, I would listen as my father got ready for work, then lock the door behind him. 1, 2, 3 clicks. At the end of our 2-block alley was a small sandlot playground with swings and slides well shined down the middle with use. The play area was bordered by wood slat benches where old country people sat cracking roasted watermelon seeds with their golden teeth and scattering the husks of an impatient gathering of gurgling pigeons. The best playground, however, was the dark alley itself. It was crammed with daily mysteries and adventures. My brothers and I would peer into the medicinal herbal shop, watching old Lee dole out onto a stiff sheet of white paper the right amount of insect shells, saffron-colored seeds, and pungent leaves for his ailing customers. It was said that he once cured a woman dying of an ancestral curse that had eluded the best of American doctors. Next to the pharmacy was a printer who specialized in gold-embossed wedding invitations and festive red banners. Farther down the street was Ping Yung Fresh Fish Market. The front window displayed a tank with doomed fish and turtles struggling to gain footing on the slimy green tiled slides. A handwritten sign informed tourists, within this store is all for food, not for pet. Inside, the butchers with their blood-stained white smocks deftly gutted the fish while customers cried out their orders and shouted, "Give me your freshest," to which the butchers always protested, "All are freshest." On less crowded market days, we would inspect the crates of live frogs and crabs which we were warned not to poke, boxes of dried cuttlefish, and row upon row of ice prawns, squid, and slippery fish. The sand dabs made me shiver each time. Their eyes lay on one flattened side, and reminded me of my mother's story of a careless girl who ran into a crowded street and was crushed by a cab. "Was smashed flat," reported by my mother. At the corner of the alley was Hong Sing's, a 4-table cafe with a recessed stairwell in front that led to a door marked Tradesmen. My brothers and I believed the bad people emerged from this door at night. Tourists never went to Hong Sing's, since the menu was printed only in Chinese. A Caucasian man with a big camera once posed me and my playmates in front of the restaurant. He had us move to the side of the picture window so the photo would capture the roasted duck with its head dangling from a juice-covered rope. After he took the picture, I told him he should go into Hong Sing's and eat dinner. When he smiled and asked me what they served, I shouted, "Guts and ducks, feet and octopus gizzards." Then I ran off with my friends, shrieked with laughter as we scampered across the alley and hid in the entryway grotto of the China Gem Company, my heart pounding with hope that he would chase us. My mother named me after the street that we lived on, Waverly Place Young, my official name for important American documents. But my family called me Mei, little sister. I was the youngest, the only daughter. Each morning before school, my mother would twist and yank on my thick black hair until she had formed two tightly wound pigtails. One day, as she struggled to weave a hard-toothed comb through my disobedient hair, I had a sly thought. I asked her, "Ma, what is Chinese torture?" My mother shook her head. A bobby pin was wedged between her lips. She wetted her palm and smoothed the hair above my ear, then pushed the pin in so it nicked sharply against my scalp. "Who say this word?" she asked without a trace of knowing how wicked I was being. I shrugged my shoulders and said, "Some boy in my class said Chinese people do Chinese torture." "Chinese people do many things," she said simply. "Chinese people do business, do medicine, do painting. Not like lazy American people. We do torture. Best torture." My older brother Vincent was the one who actually got the chess set. We had gone to the annual Christmas party held at the First Chinese Baptist Church at the end of the alley. The missionary ladies had put together a Santa bag of gifts donated by members of another church. None of the gifts had names on them. They were separate sacks for boys and girls of different ages. One of the Chinese parishioners had donned a Santa Claus costume and a stiff paper beard with cotton balls glued to it. I think only the children who thought he was the real thing were too young to know that Santa Claus was not Chinese. When my turn came up, the Santa man asked me how old I was. I thought it was a trick question. I was 7 according to the American formula and 8 by the Chinese calendar. I said I was born on March 17, 1951. That seemed to satisfy him. He then solemnly asked if I had been a very, very good girl this year, and did I believe in Jesus Christ and obey my parents. I knew the only answer to that. I nodded back with equal solemnity. Having watched the older children opening their gifts, I already knew that the big gifts were not necessarily their nicest ones. One girl my age got a large coloring book of biblical characters, while a less greedy girl who selected a smaller box received a glass vial of lavender toilet water. The sound of the box was also important. A 10-year-old boy had chosen a box that jangled when he shook it. It was a tin globe of the world with a slit for inserting money. He must have thought it was full of dimes and nickels, because when he saw that it had just 10 pennies, his face fell with such undisguised disappointment that his mother slapped him on the side of his head and let him out of the church hall, apologizing to the crowd for her son who had such bad manners he couldn't appreciate such a fine gift. As I peered into the sack, I quickly fingered the remaining presents, testing their weight, imagining what they contained. I chose a heavy, compact one that was wrapped in shiny silver foil and a red satin ribbon. It was a 12-pack of Lifesavers, and I spent the rest of the party arranging and rearranging the candy tubes in the order of my favorites. My brother Winston chose wisely as well. His present turned out to be a box of intricate plastic parts. The instructions on the box proclaimed that when they were properly assembled, he would have an authentic miniature replica of a World War II submarine. Vincent got the chess set, which would have been a very decent present to get at such a church Christmas party, except it was obviously used and, as we discovered later, it was missing a black pawn and a white knight. My mother graciously thanked the unknown benefactor, saying, "Too good, cost too much." At which point, an old lady with fine, white, wispy hair nodded toward our family and said with a whistling whisper, "Merry, Merry Christmas." When we got home, my mother told Vincent to throw the chess set away. "She not want it. We not want it," she said, tossing her head swiftly to the side with a tight, proud smile. My brothers had deaf ears. They were already lining up the chess pieces and reading from the dog-eared instruction book. I watched Vincent and Winston play during Christmas week. The chessboard seemed to hold elaborate secrets waiting to be untangled. The chessmen were more powerful than old Lee's magic herbs that cured ancestral curses. And my brothers wore such serious faces that I was sure something was at stake that was greater than avoiding the tradesman door at Hong Sing's. Let me, I begged between games, and when One brother or the other would sit back with a deep sigh of relief and victory, the other annoyed, unable to let go of the outcome. Vincent at first refused to let me play, but when I offered my lifesavers as replacements for the buttons that had filled in for the missing pieces, he relented. He chose the flavors, wild cherry for the black pawn and peppermint for the white knight. Winner could eat both. As our mother sprinkled flour and rolled out small doughy circles for the steamed dumplings that would be our dinner that night, Vincent explained the rules, pointing to each piece. You have 16 pieces and so do I. 1 king and queen, 2 bishops, 2 knights, 2 castles, and 8 pawns. The pawns can only move forward 1 step, except on the first move. Then they can move 2. But they can only take men by moving crossways like this, except in the beginning, when you have to move ahead and take another pawn. Why? I asked as I moved my pawn. Why can't they move more steps? Because they're pawns, he said. But why do they go crossways to take other men? Why aren't there any women and children? Why is the sky blue? Why must you always ask stupid questions? Asked Vincent. This is a game. These are the rules. I didn't make them up. See? Here in the book. He jabbed a page of a pawn in his hand. Pawn. P-A-W-N. Pawn. Read it yourself. My mother patted the flour off her hands. Let me see book, she said quietly. She scanned the pages quickly, not reading the foreign English symbols, seeming to search deliberately for nothing in particular. This American rules, she concluded at last. Every time people come out from foreign country, must know rules. You not know, judge say, too bad, go back. They not telling you why, so you can use their way to go forward. They say, don't know why, you find out yourself. But they knowing all the time. Better you take it, find out why yourself. She tossed her head back with a satisfied smile. I found out about all the whys later. I read the rules and looked up all the big words in a dictionary. I borrowed books from the Chinatown library. I studied each chess piece, trying to absorb the power each contained. I learned about opening moves and why it's important to control the center early on. The shortest distance between 2 points is straight down the middle. I learned about the middle game and why tactics between 2 adversaries are like clashing ideas. And the one who plays better has the clearest plans for both attacking and getting out of traps. I learned why it is essential in the endgame to have foresight, a mathematical understanding of all possible moves, and patience. All weaknesses and advantages become evident to a strong adversary and are obscured to a tiring opponent. I discovered that for the whole game one must gather invisible strengths and see the endgame before the game begins.